right, it is Thursday, the end of week 6, which is crazy, but that's where we are. So yesterday you guys had your test. Hopefully it went well. And if you guys had any questions, you got them answered. Today we're going to start talking about a new story called A Gift for a Gift. It's towards the end of your book. I'm going to read it for you today, actually, and you guys don't have to read it, but you are going to answer some questions from the both the reading and the video. So some of these are in the video only, okay, for you guys to think about. And some of them are found in the story. Okay, so this is a folk tale. So it's teaching a theme by telling a story that didn't really happen. It's only 4 pages long, so it's super short, to close out the end of the year with a one that you guys can be confident on when you guys take your test. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started, and then on Monday we'll talk more about the on Monday we'll talk more about the vocab words and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm gonna read it right now. Okay, so the first part, it's actually just in italics. It says, "Honesty is the best policy, is one of the most popular and lasting of all folktale themes. The original version of this story is attributed to Saxony, and it dates from the 17th century." So that's already questions 1 and 2. So that's kind of the background. The author is unknown. So we don't actually know who wrote it, but it was attributed to Saxony, and it dates all the way back to the 1600s. All right? And it's teaching honesty is the best policy. "A mighty king once lost his way while hunting alone in a forest, and late at night, when he was cold and weary and hungry, he at last reached the hut of a poor miner. The miner was away digging for coal, and his wife didn't realize that the gentleman who rapped on her door and begged for a night's lodging was the king himself. 'We are very poor,' she explained, 'but if you will be content, as we are, with a plate of potatoes for dinner and a blanket on the floor for a bed, you will be most welcome.' The king's stomach was empty, his bones ached, and he knew that on this dark night he would never find his way back to his castle. And so he gratefully accepted the woman's hospitality." So we're going to pause. The hospitality means kindness and care. Like, he gratefully accepted her care, her kindness that she was giving to him. Which is the answer to number 3. Right? Number 3. "He sat down to dinner with her and greedily ate a generous portion of steaming potatoes baked in an open fire. 'These are better than the best beef I've ever eaten,' he exclaimed, and still smacking his lips, he stretched out on the floor and quickly fell fast asleep. Early the next morning, the king washed in a nearby brook, which is kind of like a river, or stream, and then returned to the hut to thank the miner's wife for her kindness, and for her trouble he gave her a gold piece. Then he was on his way to his palace. When the miner returned home later that day, his wife told him about the courteous, kind, and distinguished guest who had stayed overnight in their home. Then she showed her husband the gold piece he had given her. The husband realized at once that the king himself must have been their overnight guest, and because he believed that the king had been far too generous in his payment for their humble fare and lodging, he decided to go at once to present his majesty with a bushel of potatoes, fine round potatoes, the very kind the king had enjoyed so much. The palace guards refused at first to let the miner enter, but when he explained that he wanted nothing from the king, that in fact he had come only to give the king a bushel of potatoes, they let him pass. Kind of makes me think of Cusco when Yzma's sitting there, the Emperor's New Groove, when Yzma's sitting there, telling them, "Well, you should have thought of that before you became a peasant." It's kind of what it makes me think of. "Kind sire," he said when he finally stood before the king, "last night you paid my wife a gold piece for a hard bed and a plate of potatoes. Even if you are a great and wealthy ruler, you paid too much for the little offered you. Therefore, I have brought you a bushel of potatoes, which you said you enjoyed as much as the finest beef. Please accept them, and should you ever pass by our house again, we will be happy to have the opportunity to serve you more." These proud and honest words pleased the king, and to show his appreciation, he ordered that the miner be given a fine house and a 3-acre farm. So, number 4. Overjoyed by his good luck, the honest miner returned home to share the news with his wife. Now it so happened that the miner had a brother, a wealthy brother who was shrewd, greedy, and jealous of anyone else's good fortune. When he learned of his brother's luck, he decided that he too would present the king with a gift. Not long before, the king had wanted to buy one of the brother's horses, but because he had been asked to pay an outrageously high price, the king had never bought the animal. Have you guys ever experienced that, either like in a video game or in real life, where you're like, this is way too expensive? I'm playing Animal Crossing now, and that was actually one of the problems that I had with, there was this guy trying to sell artwork, but he wanted like 4,800 of the Animal Crossing dollars for that, and it just wasn't worth it. So just think, have you guys ever experienced that? And how like you're like, that's not worth it. No. The king had never bought the animal. Now, thought the avaricious brother, he would go to his sovereign and make him a gift of the horse. After all, he reasoned, if the king gave a 3-acre farm and a house to my brother in return for a mere bushel of potatoes, I will probably get a mansion and 10 acres for my gift. So we can already see he's not being a very good, guest. He's already has ulterior motives. He has a second motive, which isn't, to be honest, it's to get his free gift. He's like, well, hey, if he gets that, why can't I? He brushed the horse and polished the harness and then rode to the palace. Past the sentries, he walked directly into the king's audience. Gracious sir, he began, not long ago you wanted to buy my horse, but I placed a very high price on it. You may have wondered why I did so, great king. Let me explain. This is where it gets interesting, where he's trying to make it seem like he has pure motives, and we're going to see how the king responds. So, he said, let me explain. I did not want to sell the horse to you. I wanted to give it to you, your majesty, and I ask you now to accept it as a gift. If you look out your window, you will see the horse in your courtyard. He is, as you know, a magnificent animal, and I'm sure that not even you have such a fine stallion in your royal stables. The king realized at once that this was not an honest gift. He smiled and said, thank you, my friend. I accept your kind gift with gratitude, and you shall not go home empty-handed. Do you see that bushel of potatoes there in the corner? Well, those potatoes cost me a 3-acre farm and a house. So remember before when he gave them that house for the potatoes? Now he's saying, well, that's what it cost me, so this is pretty valuable. He turned it around on the bad guy. Take them as your reward. I'm sure that not even you have a bushel of potatoes in your storeroom with so high a value on them. What could the greedy brother do? He dared not argue with the king. He simply raised the heavy sack to his shoulders and carried it home, while the king ordered the horse put in his stables. So, as we can see, honesty is the best policy. The second guy tried to be like, you got free stuff? Well, then I'm gonna try to give a gift. But the king knew better, and he was like, oh, you want to play this game? So he's like, here, I got these and gave someone 3 acres and a house. See how that kind of worked? Also, one other thing that I wanted to mention was the word avaricious. Wait, let me find it again so I make sure I pronounce it correctly. Yes, the avaricious. That just means greedy. So that way you guys know that going into it. But that's what our story is today. It's pretty simple, so just get really familiar with it. You don't have to read it yourself today. You're just answering the questions as you watch the video. All right?